Ave Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. While Jesus was speaking, an official came forward, knelt down before him, and said, "My daughter has just died. But come, lay your hand on her, and she will live." Jesus rose and followed him, and so did his disciples. A woman suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the tassel of his cloak. She said to herself, "If I can only touch his cloak, I shall be cured." Jesus turned around and saw her and said, "Courage, daughter, your faith has saved you." And from that hour, the woman was cured. When Jesus arrived at the official's house and saw the flute players and the crowd who were making a commotion, he said, "Go away. The girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they ridiculed him. When the crowd was put out, he came and took her by the hand. And the little girl arose. And news of this spread throughout all the land. The Gospel of the Lord. The heart and soul and mind fears and rebels against the inevitability of death. And this is why Jesus came to us, to conquer death in the resurrection. He came to us to take us by the hand. And we must take Jesus' hand. Jesus, who is risen from the dead, we must take him by the hand. Because what is more frightening than dying without Christ? What is more frightening than that? Death is not as bad as dying without Christ. In the gospel, you see these characters. They're all anonymous. No names are given. It gives the reader an opportunity to place themselves into the picture, to be one of these characters. This could be anybody. The official who comes forward, kneeling down, pleading for his daughter. The woman suffering hemorrhages, facing a fatal illness. The girl who has died, waiting for the embrace of Christ. And Jesus then becomes so important. He becomes everything. And you fast forward from the New Testament to the present times, what Jesus does to death. You see Maria Goretti, whose feast it is today. A young man named Alessandro, the son of her father's business partner, tried to rape her. Maria resisted, and while being repeatedly stabbed by him, she was not pleading for herself. She was pleading for his soul, pleading to him to stop because his soul was in mortal danger of going to hell. It took over 24 hours for her to die. She died in agony and was said to have offered her sufferings with Christ on the cross. She died with Christ. She received the sacraments from the priest, and she most definitely told the priest that yes, she forgives Alexandro. And I want to see him in heaven, she said. And so you can bet, here being martyred for attaining her Christian virtue, her virginity. Here being martyred, you know that she would spend some time in heaven interceding for this young man. He would be destined for a new life, but not quite right away. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. And for his first 8 years, he was bitter and angry. Why? Because she refused to give him his way. There was no remorse and no repentance. Maria appeared to him in a dream with an armful of lilies, which she gave to him. It was just what Alessandro needed. He was moved to repentance, and he declared to the priest of his profound hope to go to heaven, because now he felt like he might get there, because he had a saint praying for him. After prison, he made peace with Maria's mother, and he testified at the inquiries into Maria's beatification that her virtue was never compromised by his assaults. And what she defended most was not herself, but she tried to defend his soul. Imagine that. Does it sound like Christ on the cross defending us instead of warding off his oppressors? Alessandro would later become a Capuchin friar and take the name Brother Stefano. On June 24th, 1947, Maria Goretti was beatified with her mother and Brother Stefano present at the beatification. She was the first saint of the 20th century. She died with Christ. She accepted his hand. We don't have to wait for death to accept the hand of Christ. And actually, he places his hand in ours, doesn't he, at every Eucharist? He places his love upon us in our ears. He whispers in our ears with every proclamation of the gospel. And his life is enhanced by our own defense of life for others, and especially the way we charitably carry out the corporal works of mercy in the world for the sake of souls.
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, quiaque meruisti portare, alleluia, resurrexit sicut dixit, alleluia.